It's Thursday Morning Live. Here with John Rayburn,
Sammy Howell,
Oliver Weil. Thursday Morning Live. Here we go.
Do it in.
This is your afternoon's broadcast. The date is April 4th, 1949, and here's Oliver Weil.
Good afternoon, world.org. The day is April 4th, 1949, and this day marks a special one in our world. Following our recent war, it was clear that America, along with the USSR, were left to control the majority of Europe. After Adolf Hitler's terror through Europe, many of those countries were left without a stable government, thus being followed by Soviet and U.S. intervention. As you know, this left Europe nearly split in two, divided by the Eastern Communist side and the Western Democratic one. Then came problems in Germany just last year when the Soviets blocked off Western Germany, forcing U.S., British, and France's involvement. Throughout the past year, as much of you know, there has been constant trouble with the Soviets, including trouble with their covet of oil in Iran, their involvement in Turkey when the USSR required Turkey to exchange information given to them by the Western world, not to mention their persistence in influencing the violent Greek Civil War. The Soviet Union has frightened our nation along with many others around it, and the countries have gathered together and believe Soviet attack is imminent and the countries need to form a defense team. Connected through the United Nations, the U.S., along with 11 other nations, formed a treaty titled the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which in a sense is a contract vowing to protect each other from Soviet attack. I'm news correspondent Oliver Weil talking here with Hamid Karzai, President of Afghanistan. President Karzai, what has been going on recently in Afghanistan?
Well, Oliver, in Afghanistan, the Afghan Taliban is starting to take over, and with the help of NATO, peace talk is in the picture. Although I think that NATO and the Afghan Taliban are not going anywhere. That's why I've been disrupting everything there.
I'm news correspondent Oliver Weil here with Sammy Howell talking about his group's recent involvement. Sammy, what has your organization been doing around the world?
Well, Oliver, NATO's been in Iraq, where we're helping train the Iraqi security forces. We're also in Afghanistan and the Balkans, where we're helping maintain peace.
Oh, specifically in Afghanistan, what are you doing to attempt to maintain peace with the Taliban?
Well, that's a great question, Oliver. The Afghan Taliban has seized a lot of power in Afghanistan, so we're just trying to contain them, and hopefully by containing them, we're hoping to maintain a steady economy.
Oh, now I heard about recent involvement in Libya. What are you doing there?
Well, with the Libyan government attacking the civilians, we're just trying to protect the civilians.
When the U.S., France, and Britain decided to take military action to support UN efforts to protect civilians in Libya, they made a critical decision. They would act through NATO. The intervention in Libya broke ground for the alliance, but it's also raising new questions and concerns. NPR's Eric Westervelt reports from Brussels.
NATO planes are still in the air and dropping bombs over Libya. Colonel Gaddafi is still on the loose. Nonetheless, the NATO alliance is taking something of a victory lap. NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen told NPR he sees the Libya operation as a template for future NATO missions and proof the United Nations can outsource its muscle to the alliance.
Very, very positive that NATO is able to support the United Nations Security Council. That adds to the credibility of the United Nations, and I'm very pleased to see NATO in that role.
But NATO has certainly pushed the boundaries of its UN mandate, and critics say the alliance ended up providing de facto close air support for anti-Gaddafi rebels. Those critics now worry the alliance risks becoming an armed service provider for the UN and other allies. That's a long way from what NATO still insists is its core mission to protect its members' territory and population. The second way Secretary General Rasmussen sees Libya as a potential model is that America, he says, took a relative back seat, unlike NATO operations in Afghanistan and Kosovo. In Libya, European powers provided the majority of the airstrikes and almost all of the ships enforcing the arms embargo.
This time, European allies and Canada took the lead, and that's an answer to an American public that requests more European engagement. You saw it in Libya, and I hope to see that model used also in the future.
But it's hard to take the lead when you run critically low on precision-guided bombs after barely 2 months, as NATO's European allies did in Libya. The U.S. stepped in and sold the alliance ordnance, saving NATO from humiliation. And it's largely NATO's spin that America took a back seat this time. The U.S. launched 97% of the Tomahawk cruise missiles that crippled Gaddafi's air defenses at the start of the conflict. And the U.S. still conducted more sorties than any other country, 26% in all. And throughout, the U.S. has provided the majority of the intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, aerial refueling, and targeting capabilities. Ian Lesser directs the German Marshall Fund's Transatlantic Center in Brussels.
Without critical American assets, this would not have been possible, and I suppose one could argue that if the operation had to go on too much longer, it also would not have been possible.
The U.S. ambassador to NATO, Ivo Dalder, notes the essential U.S. role, but insists Libya was an alliance-wide effort that saw huge contributions from Norway, Denmark, and Belgium, as well as NATO partner countries Jordan, Qatar, Sweden, and the UAE.
Key large military countries proved indispensable, but others contributed in an important and indeed in a decisive manner. And that is what an alliance like this is all about.
But only 8 of the 28 NATO members took part in the air combat, and NATO officials concede the mission underscored deep weaknesses in European capabilities. Britain and France together attacked nearly half of the targets in Libya, and former British Foreign Secretary Douglas Hurd believes the Libya mission represents a worrying trend for NATO, because Europe's 2 largest military powers shouldered most of the burden.
That's ourselves, the British, and the French. We are the only 2 countries, apart from the United States, in NATO, who actually have the will, the guts, if you like, to intervene where intervention is clearly needed to prevent a slaughter.
European powerhouse Germany declined to take part at all in the military operations and even pulled its crews out of NATO support aircraft. Analyst Giles Merritt with the think tank Security and Defense Agenda says Germany's move underscores a serious weakness for all of Europe.
The German failure to put its shoulder to the wheel on Libya raised big question marks about how we're going to run European defense and security policy in the future.
In June, departing U.S. Defense Secretary Robert Gates warned that unless NATO's European members commit more weapons, money, and personnel to lessen its reliance on the U.S., the alliance risks becoming irrelevant. Despite the NATO self-praise over Libya, it's a warning that still lingers in the halls of Brussels. Eric Westervelt, NPR News, Brussels.
After all the countries in NATO met in early 1952, 3 years after the inception of the group, they decided that it was necessary that they elect a leader. The group decided on the term Security General and elected their first leader, Hastings Lionel Ismay, an assistant to Winston Churchill during the war. Since then, 11 leaders have been elected, and interestingly enough, none of those 11 have been American. The current position is held by ex-Danish Prime Minister Anders Fogh Rasmussen. Rasmussen was elected in April of 2009 and was in office by August the same year. Since his election, Rasmussen has taken specific initiative in affairs with countries in Afghanistan, Iran, and most recently in Libya.
Jacob, time to wake up. We want to give a shout out to a few places who helped us out. NPR, you the man.
USA Today,
You the man.
New York Times,
You the man. Where is NATO today, and where will they be in the future? 60 years after 1949, times are changing. No longer are the Americans combining resources with European countries to fight off the Soviet Union. Rather, NATO is being called up in cases like Libya and Afghanistan to fight the wars of others, or, moreover, to maintain peace.